They say fame used to be measured in hearts and followers, but in the quiet town of Millfield, fame had a different price. Millfield wasn't much, just crooked streets, flickering streetlights, and houses that whispered when the wind blew too long. People there didn't chase fame, they feared it. Because once, a long time ago, someone tried, and the town never forgot. Our story begins with a man named Darren Cole, a face that once shone on every screen. He wasn't just popular, he was worshipped. A content creator, a social media god who turned every laugh, every tear, every shadow of his life into views. But fame, like fire, eats what feeds it. And one day, Darren's light began to fade. The algorithm no longer favored him. His followers moved on. The sponsors stopped calling. Darren sat in his dim apartment, scrolling through endless feeds that no longer showed his face. His reflection stared back from the black screen, tired eyes, hollow smile. Then, one night, an alert appeared on his phone. No logo, no sender, just a single message. Would you give up your shadow to be seen again? He laughed at first, probably some hacker prank. But when he touched the screen, the phone pulsed like a heartbeat. The app installed itself. Eclipse. That was its name. A voice whispered from the speaker, smooth and melodic. Your fame has faded because you've given all you can. But your shadow holds what's left. Trade it, and you'll shine again. Darren's thumb hovered over accept. He thought about the empty inbox, the ignored messages, the silence of a world that had forgotten him. And then he tapped. When Darren woke the next morning, everything felt brighter. His phone exploded with notifications. His name trended again. His face was everywhere. He laughed. He danced. He filmed a comeback video that broke every record he'd ever set. The world was his again. But when he turned to switch off the light, something froze him mid-step. His shadow didn't move. At first, he thought it was fatigue, maybe a glitch in the light. He waved his hand. The shadow stayed still. He stepped forward. The shadow remained. And then, slowly, it raised its own hand, a beat after his. Darren's chest tightened. Okay, that's weird. He tried to laugh it off. Shadows don't move on their own. Maybe it was his imagination. Maybe. But that night when he turned on his camera to record again, the shadow wasn't behind him. It was beside him. For a heartbeat, the dark outline leaned closer, matching his every grin, his every blink, but with something colder in its shape, almost human, almost alive. He shut off the lights, and from the corner of the room, he heard a faint rustle, like fabric moving, like footsteps that weren't his. The next morning, Darren found something carved into his bathroom mirror. We share the light now. He stared at it, breath trembling. Then he did what any influencer would do. He recorded it. Creepiest thing ever, he said to the camera, forcing a laugh. Someone's trolling me. Millions watched, millions commented, and his fame exploded even higher. But what they didn't know was that in every video, if you looked closely, Darren's shadow smiled a second too late. Days turned to weeks. Darren's channel became a phenomenon. People claimed to see shapes moving in the background, whispers under his voice, eyes in the dark. He called it the Shadow Challenge. His fans loved it. They started trying it themselves, shining lights at night, recording their shadows, waiting for something to happen. Some swore they saw their reflections blink. Others said their shadows moved first. It became a movement, a game. But Darren knew better, because every night his shadow grew darker, taller, hungrier. Sometimes he woke up standing by his window, not knowing how he got there. Sometimes he saw his own hands moving before his brain told them to. One night, during a live stream, a viewer commented, "Your shadow just walked away." Darren froze, turned around. The space behind him was empty, but the wall flickered like a screen with static. Then, for just a second, his silhouette smiled and disappeared. He ended the stream, shaking. His room felt colder than before. The light seemed weaker. He opened the Eclipse app again, but this time it wouldn't load. Only one line appeared. A deal is a deal. Outside, thunder rolled across the town. The streetlights flickered one by one until only the glow from Darren's window remained. And from the other side of the glass, his shadow smiled back at him. The town of Millfield had always been quiet until Darren Cole brought the noise back. His videos blazed across every platform. His followers called him the Shadow Man now. They said his content felt alive. Every flicker of darkness, every faint whisper, every unsettling reflection drew them closer. But something in his tone had changed. His voice carried weight, a strange pull, like his words were sinking into their heads. He spoke of light and fame, but there was something hollow behind his smile. At night, when he walked the streets of Millfield, streetlights flickered off as he passed. The air grew colder. Dogs wouldn't bark. Windows shut quietly as he moved through town. He started hearing whispers, not from his fans, but from the dark corners of his home. More eyes, more light. Feed us. He tried to sleep, but his dreams were filled with mirrors, reflections of himself smiling while his body lay still. Sometimes the shadow spoke from those mirrors, voice slick like oil. "We are what they watch. They look for you, but they see me." In the mornings, Darren would find strange smudges on his walls, shaped like handprints, black oily handprints. They didn't come off. And then he began noticing something even stranger. His views didn't just rise. His followers multiplied overnight, far beyond reason. Millions, then billions. But he hadn't posted in days. People around the world began sharing videos of Darren doing things he'd never done. In one, he stood in a forest under a blood-red moon, whispering to the trees. In another, he sat by a lake, staring into the reflection for hours, unmoving. He hadn't filmed those. He couldn't have. He tried to explain it on a live stream, face pale, voice trembling. "It's not me. Someone's editing my..." The feed froze. And then, on screen, his own shadow stepped out from behind him. It leaned toward the camera, tilted its head, and spoke, though no mouth moved. "Don't you want to see what fame looks like without him?" The live stream chat exploded. Hearts flooded the screen. People thought it was a stunt. But Darren saw his reflection on the monitor, and there was no shadow behind him anymore. That night he tried to destroy his equipment. He smashed the cameras, deleted the app, burned his phone. But every screen he looked into, his laptop, his TV, even the reflections in glass, showed his shadow still there, filming him. The next morning, his account posted again, a new video, title, "When the Light is Gone." In the video, the shadow sat where Darren used to sit. It smiled and said softly, "He sold me for fame. I took what was left." The video reached 1 billion views in a day. Millfield changed after that. People said the skies dimmed. The air grew heavier. Shadows began behaving oddly across the town, stretching the wrong way, moving slower than their owners. Some disappeared entirely. Children whispered about seeing the man with no shadow walking past their windows at night. He left no footprints, only a chill that made the lights flicker. One evening, a group of teenagers gathered near the old water tower, the place Darren once filmed his first viral clip. They turned on their phones, calling out, laughing. Then, one by one, their screens went black, and from the darkness, a voice whispered, deep and familiar, would you give up your shadow to be seen? The next morning, the police found their phones on the ground, cameras still recording, but no one there, only a faint shimmer, like silhouettes burned into air. In his house, Darren sat in front of his broken camera, pale and hollow. He spoke to the lens for the last time. If you see this, don't download the app. Don't believe the whispers. I tried to be seen, and now I'll never be gone. He stood, stepped toward the wall, and for a moment you could almost see two figures overlapping, one light, one dark. Then the screen flickered, and only the shadow remained. By nightfall, his window glowed again, the same eerie light that had started it all. And from that day forward, in Millfield, no one cast a shadow the same way again. Millfield fell quiet. Phones lay dead, screens frozen on Darren's last video. No one dared touch them. The town that once lived online now walked in whispers. Shops closed early. Curtains stayed drawn. Even the birds stopped singing. But still, every night a faint glow rose from Darren's house on the hill. The same cold light that had once made him famous. Children called it the ghost light. Parents said not to look directly at it. But curiosity is louder than fear. One evening, a girl named Lena, 12 years old and braver than most, crept up the hill. Her small flashlight trembled in her hand. When she reached the porch, the door stood open, swaying slightly as if breathing. Inside, everything was covered in a thin layer of dust except the mirror on the wall. It gleamed, spotless, and in it, Lena didn't see herself. She saw him, Darren, pale, smiling faintly, his eyes dark like polished glass. He whispered, voice echoing through the room though his lips barely moved. Tell them, the shadow is hungry. Low drone grows, then silence. Weeks passed. Then, without warning, the world's phones buzzed. A notification blinked on every screen. Eclipse, version 2.0 available. No one knew where it came from. No app store, no developer. Just there. And those who clicked install vanished from their reflections. In Millfield, people watched mirrors carefully. Some shadows were thinner now, others flickered. Teachers found students staring at their own silhouettes. Lovers woke to find their partner's shadows lying in the wrong place. And late at night, screens began to light up on their own, playing silent videos of people who weren't there. Some said Darren's voice was behind it all. Others said the shadow had learned to live without him. Across the globe, storytellers began repeating the tale. The man who traded his shadow for fame. Only now, the story had no end because it kept happening. Years later, long after Millfield faded from maps, people still whispered the legend. Old folk would tell it by candlelight. There once was a man who thought the world could never forget him. But one night, a traveling storyteller arrived in a distant village. He told the tale perfectly. The rise, the deal, the shadow. The crowd was spellbound. And when he reached the part where Darren said, "We share the light now," the storyteller smiled too widely. Someone in the front row gasped. The lantern behind him cast no shadow. By morning, the storyteller was gone. Only his voice remained, recorded somehow on every phone in town. Stories live because we listen. Shadows live because we watch. They say if you stand beneath a streetlight at midnight and whisper your greatest wish, your shadow will lean closer and ask for something in return. Most people walk away, but a few answer. Somewhere far from Millfield, A new creator rises every year, their screens glowing, their fame blooming overnight. And if you look closely at their videos, sometimes the light bends wrong. Folk tales are warnings dressed as stories. This one is no different, because the man who sold his shadow was never just one man. It was every soul that traded truth for attention, every dreamer who forgot that even light casts darkness. So when the night feels too still and your reflection lingers a heartbeat too long, remember, fame fades, light burns, but shadows remember everything.